Welcome to Murder Mile. Today, I'm standing on the Marylebone Road, NW1. 2 streets west of the burglary of William Raven. 1 street north of the recruitment of Churchill's favourite spy. A short walk west of the last sighting of René Hanrahan. And 1 street north of the boy who broke the rules. Coming soon to Murder Mile. Perched on the corner of Gloucester Place, currently sits the old Marylebone Town Hall. A large stone structure with Doric columns and an obelisk-like tower, made famous by the known faces who have wed there. Sadly, as a registry office, marriages which begin there tend not to last. As Paul McCartney got hitched, rather creepily, to 2 wives there, only to end up widowed and divorced. Stroppy Oasis grumbler Liam Gallagher married Patsy Kensit and Nicole Appleton there, only for both marriages to lose their shine. And having wisely split from the second best drummer in the Beatles, Ringo Starr received his marching orders from ex-Bond girl Barbara Bach.
I'm warning you with peace and love.
And I'm sure, in his typically passive-aggressive way, stated that he was far too busy to sign the divorce petition.
I have too much to do.
With peace and love. Peace and love.
Anyway, peace and love, peace and love.
Although called the Old Marylebone Town Hall, it's not actually that old, having finished its construction in 1920. Prior to this, once stood Salisbury Mansions, a set of 3-storey townhouses for the city's professionals. One such flat was owned by Frederick Chappell, a wealthy merchant from Liverpool. Only residing in his own townhouse just a few streets away, this discreet and convenient little hideaway would be the home of his pregnant mistress, 24-year-old Sarah Emily Mitchell. Being once his maid, now the mother of his child, here she would live like a lady, and yet she would never be treated as his wife. This is a place synonymous with unhappy unions, but only one of them would lead to murder. My name is Michael, I'm your tour guide, and this is Murder Mile. Episode 184, A Woman's Sin. Were you to read any articles from this era about Sarah Emily Mitchell, you would see her tarred with the brush of a wretched mother, a woman of sin, and a harlot of no pedigree. This unjust persecution is something that still happens today, hence why gossip mags and tabloid trash litter the shelves. Fixated on trivial tales of marital splits, cheating cats, and how, bafflingly, a female celebrity who we've not seen since the 80s has got both fatter and older. But why people love them is that it shows someone of a higher status being brought down to a level lower than her own. She was born Sarah Emily Mitchell in 1840. Although her exact details are unknown, as being a lower middle-class woman, her life wasn't worth recording, except as an appendage to a man. Raised in the bustling port city of Liverpool, she was blessed with a better life than most, as her father wasn't burdened by the endless grind of manual labour. As being an accountant, he had a profession. Alongside her sister Eliza, Sarah had just 2 choices in life: to marry a man and bear his babies, or to go into domestic service. In 1859, aged 19, Sarah Mitchell went into service as the housekeeper to Frederick Chapel, a wealthy merchant and recent widower with 2 young daughters to care for, who lived in the resplendence of Highton Hall, a large estate in the fresh, smog-free outskirts of Liverpool. Given a good wage, a kind family to attend to, and later joined by her sister as assistant housekeeper, with Frederick being a man of wealth whose business took him to many places, Sarah and Eliza lived in his second home, a small townhouse situated not far from the city's port. As a young, fresh-faced girl, innocent of the world and inexperienced of its dangers, she was blessed to have fallen into such a pleasant life. It's true that her hours were long and her chores were endless. But what made her days a pleasure was Frederick, her employer, with whom she was deeply smitten. Being as aged as her own father, a little lacking in follicles on top, and with a pot belly as rotund as an upturned cauldron, Frederick may not have been the most handsome man, but being blessed with a kind nature and a big heart, he was certainly the sort of man a lower-class girl would dream of marrying. As happens, eyes met and lips followed. As a young, impressionable girl and a grieving widower, their romance was mutual. And with chemicals fizzing and feelings aplenty, basic logic made way for love. Initially, Sarah kept this steamy little love tryst with her boss a secret from her sister. But their longing looks and furtive fumbles couldn't be kept quiet for long. Eliza would state, Mr. Chapel visited daily. He would take his meals there, his breakfast, and his coffee in the afternoon. In a society where status was everything, and the class you were born in was the class you would die in, these two should never have been. So for the price of a piece of passion, they let their hearts rule their heads, in a romance doomed to failure. Had they seen common sense, their brief dalliance may have ended there. But on an undefined night in September 1861, Sarah and Frederick engaged in a wild night of nudity and naughtiness, from which a baby would bloom. Given the era, neither party knew about the ticking time bomb of chromosomes growing inside her womb. But as eyes popped wide, tongues clucked, and gossip gabbled, this undeniable evidence of their dirty doings would soon explode into the world like a screaming firework of tears and shit. To our modern eyes and liberal sensibilities, it may seem quaint that society would be so up in arms about a man of stature carrying on sexually with a girl from below the stairs. But that attitude is no less scandalous today. How much ink has been blown on news stories about a man of status and a woman of less? Like the priest and his housekeeper, the prince and the Hollywood actress, and the Californian governor and his maid. Over time, the text may have changed in the trashy tabloids, and images may have been added to the gossip rags. But this stinky attitude still reeks of a desire to see the classes put in their places has not. In May 1862, with her oversized clothes struggling to disguise 8 months of pregnancy, still unable to admit to her sister that a baby was on the way, they conceived a ruse to hide it from their eyes. Born in secret, at an undisclosed flat using a private nurse, on the 11th of June 1862, Sarah gave birth to a little girl who she named Sarah Emily Adeline Mitchell. With peach-like skin and a loud set of lungs, it was clear that the baby was healthy and happy, and that its beaming mother was blissfully joyous. Notified of its arrival, Frederick did the decent thing, and he registered the child's birth using his name as its father, shielding the mother and baby from further scandal. It's fair to say that in the Victorian era, people feared the disease of how others perceived them over actual illnesses. A sickness could come and go, but if someone cast aspersions over your home life, your habits, or who the father of the baby was suckling at your breast, that could linger for a lifetime. On paper, Frederick was the father. But even to silence their cruel words, he could never marry her. She was the wrong class. So endemic was his attitude that even if his loved ones overcame their revulsion, the aftermath of marrying a lower class woman could risk his business and reputation, whether he liked her or not. Seeing no one but her baby, and kept hidden in a lonely flat, from the baby's birth until mid-July, Sarah began to experience side effects of the pregnancy and what we would term as postnatal depression. Needing family, Eliza was told of the confinement and was moved to London to be by Sarah's side. With money no object, Frederick hired Dr. William Cathro, a respected and discreet practitioner who attended to Sarah's black moods. His diagnosis was hysterical peritonitis. Following a traumatic birth, the stomach sometimes suffers a reddening and swelling known as peritonitis. Today, we know it's caused by bacterial infection in the blood or a rupture. But in the 1800s, it was believed to have been caused by hysteria. Being a woman, and therefore prone to the extremes of emotions, with the wonder of penicillin not to be discovered for another 70 years, the cure he would administer was not an anti-inflammatory, but something to quell her mood. Marketed as a woman's friend, laudanum, a mix of opium and alcohol, was used to treat all manner of female maladies, as they were termed, which these predominantly male doctors didn't understand, such as menstruation, childbirth, and the very fashionable malady of its day known as the vapors, which included such ladylike symptoms as hysteria, mood swings, fainting spells, and depression. According to Dr. Cathro, I got her well by giving her large doses of opium. Being drugged into silence, Sarah was discreetly returned back to Liverpool, where she lived in a pleasant flat funded by Frederick. As a wealthy and generous man, she lived a better life than most. with a weekly allowance, her food and clothes on account, and no need to worry about work or paying the rent. But this was not a life. Hidden from view like a dark secret, the baby rarely seeing light, and the mother barely seeing people. Being kept under wraps for fear of ruining his reputation. This imprisonment only made us sicker. On the 11th of October 1862, as a savage echo of Scouse tongues faded behind her, Sarah was moved from her hometown of Liverpool to a new home of London. As being a woman of no known past, she could reinvent herself as a woman without scandal. That day, at the newly opened Baker Street station, Sarah and Eliza were met by Frederick. In a cab, he escorted them both to a presentable little lodging on Weymouth Street, replete with ornate drapes, soft furnishings, a cold store, and every conceivable modern luxury, like running water and gas lighting. For Sarah, feeling rather regal in such a grand place as this, she would often quip to her sister that she felt she should call herself Milady. And yet she would be gifted a much grander title than that. As to the landlady, Frederick introduced Sarah as Mrs. Chapel. With a gold ring on her finger, a townhouse in London, Eliza as her live-in maid, and no one to dare question her status, as a gentleman's word was enough. Given the circumstances, Frederick had done his best for her, himself, but also his business. During her first month living a life as a lady amongst the London elite, Sarah was in her element. With her mood rosy, her health spry, and her maternal affections to her blessed baby Sarah without reproach, she had begun to become acclimatized to her new status. Only what plagued her mind daily was the sham. On the public's lips, they were Mr. and Mrs. Chapel. But on the documents which mattered, they were not. In short, the marriage was a facade, the child was a bastard, and she would forever be seen as a woman of sin. A dirty little secret, hidden from view, and swept under the carpet like an embarrassment of dust. For now, she was a lady. But how long could this silence last in a land full of whispers and suspicion? In society's eyes, Sarah was nothing but a cocky little queue jumper. A whorish louse who had unleashed the perfume of her feminine wares to lure this wealthy widower into her lair. And in his weakened state of grief, she had ensnared him with a baby of burden to wring his wealth dry for her own gain. In truth, she hadn't. But the second a fragment of gossip is either written or repeated, regardless of whether it is based on a shred of truth, its factual veracity is irrelevant in the court of public opinion. Rightly, Sarah couldn't live with such dishonesty, and its torment made her mind a terror. Of her sister, Eliza would state, she was once so lively, so vibrant, a girl of smiles and warmth. And as a mother, she was always extremely kind to the child, she showed more maternal tenderness to it than I have ever known. But gripped by depression and distress, although unable to sleep, her bed became her home, her pillow a prison. Daylight was now an enemy, and her silence like a bitter wind. For Frederick, he lived his own life in his own townhouse a few streets away, in a place it was best for the woman who was sort of his wife not to pop by. So he went to her. Still both smitten, as often happens, the bedsheets were warmed, and a second baby would bloom. In November 1862, requiring a much larger residence for this expanding brood, Frederick moved Sarah, his pregnant mistress, her 5-month-old daughter, and her sister Eliza as the live-in maid, into a 2-story lodging at Salisbury Mansions on the Marylebone Road. It was a fresh start in a new house. But from where this sin had begun, soon tragedy would follow. Sarah's second pregnancy was not a joyous one. As whether sensing its mother's anguish, this restless baby had not given her a single night's sleep since conception. Born on the 13th of April 1863, Frederick Chapel, son of Frederick Chapel, was born, with his father's name in life and on its birth certificate. But being born a full 3 months premature, with its energy utterly spent and emerging in an excess of his mother's blood, this undersized spawn had lived a little, but it lasted just half an hour. Her baby was dead, and inside her soul, so was its mother. Diagnosed with hysterical peritonitis by Dr. Cathro, he noted she had a good deal of nerves about her, with pains in the abdomen that I could not account for, but also pains in the head and a very great restlessness. Keeping her sedated, but failing to identify her situation as the cause, she required large doses of opium. I gave her a very considerable quantity to enable her to get any rest at all, but also to silence her tears and the neighbours' gossip. On the doctor's orders, seeing how excitable they stated she was, as wailing with every ounce of her exhausted breath, as the milky smell of her dead son still clung to her empty arms, her daughter was removed to a different room, and it was decided that Frederick should no longer visit her as often. What spurred this decision was that she had made ill words to end her life and that of her child, unless Frederick and she could live as man and wife. And yet for her sake, or most probably for his, the doctors had separated them. Riddled with paranoia, from the confines of a lonely bed, Sarah saw things which were never real. On the bitter breeze, she heard the gossipy whispers which stabbed in her ears. Through the walls walked faceless spirits, whose cruel questions never quelled. At her feet often stood a policeman to drag her to the asylum. And too terrified to sleep, a black river of beetles scuttled about her bed, body, and head. To give her peace, when her moods seemed less black, Eliza brought her baby daughter to Sarah. Sat in placid silence, this small act of mercy did more than any drug ever could. But it also exacerbated her greatest fear. "Assure me, dear sister," Sarah would state. "Don't let Mr. Chappell take my baby from me." Sarah lived in hope of a blissful end to her troubles and trauma, but it was not to be. With 3 doctors, all specialists in their field, having determined that her declining mental state was proving to be a hazard to the welfare, business, and reputation of their client, Mr. Frederick Chappell, through Dr. Cathro, a letter of importance was delivered to Eliza. It read, "I'm very sorry to have to tell you, but I've written to your sister to say that a separation must take place between us. With this view, my solicitor will call tomorrow to confirm with her as to my making a proper settlement for you all. For I'm resolved neither your sister nor yourself shall ever be wanting. Yours sincerely, F. Chappell." Being as good as his word, a generous annual allowance was made for Sarah, Eliza, and the baby. And in his will, written prior to his son's death, this was upheld, leaving a second nest egg for life. Financially, Sarah could live her life as a comfortable lady. But as a woman of sin, she would have to do it alone. Unhappy with this settlement, Sarah would reject his offer. And once again, death would return to Salisbury Mansions. Friday the 31st of July 1863 was a better day according to most. With Sarah sleeping, eating, and having been weaned off the laudanum, a sense of normality had returned. In the morning, with a 13-month-old baby sat in its pram, and its rosy cheeks all giggles, Eliza strolled it amongst the fresh, crisp air of Regent's Park. Back at the flat, all was not well, as her doctors, accompanied by solicitor, enthusiastically instructed Sarah of the medical benefits of taking this generous offer, doing what was best for herself, the baby, and of course Mr. Chappell and his business interests. In court, having previously declared her as sane, the doctors would state she was a very obstinate person, excessively so. I thought so by her not taking the advice I had given her with the best intention, as well as I formed the opinion that she was labouring under insanity. All she had to do to make the pain go away was to sign the settlement and give up all annoyance of Mr. Chappell. At 1 p.m, they left. Shortly afterwards, Sarah and Eliza had lunch. And feeling an overwhelming desire to enjoy a sumptuous peach, at 2:30 p.m, Sarah asked Eliza to buy them both one from Covent Garden Market, as Sarah cuddled her daughter. Sweeping their failures aside, as if their expertise was never to be in question, as the case revolved around the motive of this loose woman's morals. The doctors would inform the court the great cunning that she showed was another symptom of her insanity. But for Sarah, this was not a cunning plan to avenge her former lover, as in her eyes, it was the only way out. Being alone in the sparse empty flat, Sarah laid out 2 neat piles of clothes on the bedside chair. A nightdress and stockings for herself, and beside them, a set for the baby. And although clean, neither would be worn just yet, as they were for the laying out of the bodies when mother and baby were dead. In her Bible, she'd marked up a few passages of prominence, and with no will or final words, clutching a sharp razor, she had stabbed down deep into the baby's chest, through its tiny thorax and its little lungs, as the pristine white of its woolen nightdress began to stain with a slow spreading red from within. With nothing left to live for, no marriage, no Frederick, her baby son dead, and her daughter soon to join them, Sarah ripped the blade across her throat, sawing a jagged wound from ear to ear, and dividing her jugular vein until her body was still, her skin was pale, and her pulse was weak. Discovered when Eliza returned. Although the baby clung on to life, it died just 2 days later. Miraculously, although critical, Sarah survived and was found to be pregnant, once again with Frederick's child. On the 4th of August 1863, in a coroner's inquest held at the Buffalo's Head Tavern on Marylebone Road, after just 5 minutes, the jury returned a verdict of willful murder. Imprisoned at Newgate, her visiting physician was Dr. Cathro, who as witness against her would testify that her eyes were vacant, her movements unsure, and being of unsound mind, he declared her as insane. Having already lost a large amount of blood, a second physician, Dr. Charon of Charing Cross, decided it best to alleviate her hallucinations, her mania, and her suicidal thoughts by bloodletting. Weakened more before the trial, not a single doctor had asked if it was the cruel situation, the pressure of society, or the doctor's insistence, paid for by a man she wished was her husband, which had made her insane. But instead, it was ruled that, being a woman of a lower class, she was cursed by emotions and sin. Tried at the Old Bailey on the 26th of October 1863, and charged with the willful murder of a bastard child and her own attempted suicide, Sarah was found not guilty on the grounds of insanity and was ordered to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure. Which begs the question, as a maid, had she fallen for a man of her own class, was it more likely that she would have lived? Status is only relevant to those who fear losing it. Happiness is what's important. None of us are perfect. We all make mistakes, and we all try to better ourselves. So why do we find it so shocking when someone dares to do better, to achieve more, or to be greater than life says we should? And there we have it. Oh, that was a bit of a mouthful in places, that was. I deliberately written it in a kind of a stylized 18th century way, therefore, kind of mimicking the kind of letter that was in there. God, the way people write in the 18th century is just fucking annoying. It's just, we'll read Frederick's letter in a bit, but you just say to yourself, just say what you mean, mother fornicator. Just say what you mean. Stop trying to be florid with your effing words, you turd. Anyway, welcome to Extra Mile. I'm not saying you're a turd. You're not a turd. You're lovely. You're very lovely. Of course you are. Of course you are. You listen to Murder Mile. You must be lovely. I mean, these people on here. Oh, right. Hello, Murky Milers. I haven't said Murky Milers in ages. Murky Milers. Welcome to Murky Milers, the people who stay till the bitter end. Not those people who've buggered off already. Yeah, balls to them. They're like off. They're like, I can't be asked to listen to this. You know what? They miss out on all the fun stuff. So balls to them. Balls to Monty. I've just taken your hat off, by the way. Right. Shall I have a tea? I might do a peppermint. Let's do a peppermint. That will be nice. Nicer for Michael. So I'm moving away. I forgot to put water in the doodah. So there we go. Water in. Whoa, lummy lordy up on high. Oh, right. Let's do that. Off and on. Ooh, look, a Bakewell tart. Not Bakewell tart, Belgian bun. See, I haven't had any for so long that I've forgotten what they're called. So let's pop that there. I'm going to have a peppermint. Oh, cripes. Lordy up on high. What time is it? What day is it? I don't know. It's a Friday. So I edited one episode this week, and then I went into town and recorded some stuff. Then I wrote, and I'm editing another episode this week. A busy week. Still trying to get myself ahead. I've got enough time to go and visit my dad and my stepmom now, and to go to CrimeCon and talk to 4 people. So I'm sure it'll be fine. So what else is going on? Yeah, just powering ahead, just getting busy. In the evenings, writing the special thing that I'm writing for when I'm away on the research weeks. I've got something interesting that I'm going to trot out. So something different. So yeah, I hope you'll enjoy that. What else is going on in the world? It's fine. It's nice and cool out at the moment. The heat wave has kind of buggered off a bit, which is great news. Great news. Heat wave, bugger off. We've had nice downpours of water, so that's filling up the canals, not up to the level it should be, because the canals are filled up by the reservoirs and the reservoirs are drained. So we need a lot more water to come and help. What else is going on? Regular laptop dead. Well, it didn't die. It's just the pins that charge up the battery are gone. Luckily, I'm not on Old Faithful laptop. I'm on backup laptop, which is my smaller one, which allegedly has a 20-hour battery. Ooh, very exciting, Michael. And I've set up with all the goodies on it. So it's got Google Drive on it. So all my files are on there, so I can edit. It's got all my software on it. It's got all my documents on there. So yep, literally when one laptop went pooey, I just moved to the other laptop, which is good. Great. And I've still got Old Faithful hidden away just in case, because you never know. So that's good. That's everything's good at the moment. Thank you this week to new Patreon supporter. This is Mark Wilson. Mark Wilson, thank you very much, Mark Wilson, for becoming a Patreon subscriber. You get if you go through all the old stuff, you can click on photos and you can see, I think it's all the photos up until like episode 50 and beyond. So you've got a good wealth of photos, crime scene photos that I won't share anywhere else. You've got location videos, lots of stuff. If people want to become Patreon subscriber, you can. There is almost 100 episodes of Walk With Me now, with a weekly Friday movie that I share, so a murder-related movie, so I share some interesting stuff on there. Lots of things that I will never share anywhere else, so all worth it, and it's all just, I think it's like £2.50 a month, nothing. You cannot even get a coffee in Costa for that now. They've gone from $2.60, I think it was, about 3 years ago, to it's now $3.80. And with milk being more expensive now, that's going to hit the fours. We know it. Anyway. Right. I'm going to do some... Ooh, is my kettle going to go? It is. Look, here we go. There we go. Herbal tea time. Herbal tea time. Herbal tea time. He's a man with a herbal tea. A minty tea. Let's do some quiz questions, and then we'll dive into some extra stuff to do with this episode. So, question number 1. Who gave the second best drummer in the Beatles, Ringo Starr, his marching orders? As mentioned at the start of the episode. So that's question number 1. Who gave Ringo Starr his marching orders? Question number 2. What city did Sarah and Eliza come from? Come on, that's an easy one. Easy peasy. Question number 3. Ooh, burp. That's not the question. Question number 3. What was the name of Frederick's splendid home in the country? Ooh. Don't forget, as always, I haven't edited this episode yet, so some of the questions... I think last week's episode, question 10 didn't make it in. So not always all of them will make it. And this is unedited, so I'm not going to go back and edit this crap at all. Question 4. What did Dr. Cathro diagnose Sarah as having post-labour? Question 5. In the 1800s, hysteria, mood swings, depression and fainting spells were given the fashionable name of what? I think I unleash these on a regular basis. Question 6. At what station did Frederick meet Sarah and Eliza to show them their first lodging? Question 7. What 2 modern luxuries did the lodging have? Question 8. What was the first name of both children of Sarah? Question 9. Where did Eliza take the child for its last ever walk? And question 10. Where was the inquest held? There we go. So let's dive into some extra stuff here. When I was planning this one, my plan really was to look at how the doctors and the lawyers had basically manipulated Sarah into doing what they felt was best for Frederick, because Frederick was the one paying the bills. But as I started going through, I realised there was an interesting connection between the scandal rags, the shite in the news agents, Heat, Hello, Take a Break, all those oh, look at this nasty bastard. Look, there's a woman wearing a bikini and she looks a little bit fat. Let's make fun of her. That kind of shite. So I realised there was a really real direct connection between this and that kind of shite. So I thought it'd be better to really have a dig at that. So there's bits that I glossed over on this, but we can dive into it. So there were several doctors that Frederick had used throughout. There was a couple of different doctors, especially with the first pregnancy as well. But I've really focused on William Cathro because he was the doctor that was focused on her mental health, especially with the second pregnancy, and he was one of the witnesses at the trial. So, what can we say about him? He had diagnosed her with depression and excitability, as they call it. He would state that she was excitable, passionate, and jealous. This was something that they were constantly bringing up, that he would say, I frequently heard her say that she would do something to herself and her child unless she could live kindly with Mr. Chappell. That means as man of wife properly. This is something that was constantly being referenced, that she was going a little bit mental. She believed that he was having an affair with another woman, which we don't have any evidence of. And this is what the doctors were focused on. The doctors really seem to be assisting Frederick in getting what Frederick needs. He does seem like a decent guy deep down. You know, there's a lot of things as a man of money and prestige, he could have just gone, yep, sod you, I'm going to get rid of you easily. But he seems to he seems to be in a difficult situation, which is not to give him a kind of an out for this. But, you know, he puts his name on the birth certificate, which, as hopefully I kept that in, it's mentioned that, you know, some people don't do that. Some people go, I'm not going to do that, or, you know, maybe they just don't want the father's name mentioned on there. Oh, ow, that hurt. Sorry, that was Eva. Eva, give me a kick because I'm not making a lethal drink fast enough. As mentioned, they used laudanum to kind of pacify. They don't see, again, that this is kind of in an era before kind of psychiatry is even kind of in its foremost. We're still in an era where in the asylums they've only just got to the point where they're starting to understand that you don't put everyone in straitjackets, you don't beat them, you don't starve them. This is kind of a point where it's about education, but education and kind of being given someone space and kindness and things like that. So, but at this point, we still got doctors who are kind of they still got the arrogance. We are doctors. We know what we're talking about. We know what's right for her. This is our client. Isn't the patient? It's the person who pays the bills. What have we got here? A lot of the details we were able to get from Eliza, because don't forget, Eliza as her sister was there all the time. She was a living maid, and she was the one quite often when Sarah couldn't deal with stuff. Eliza would be the one who would be dealing with the doctors and the solicitor and things like that. And she was kind of a bit of a piggy in the middle there. She said her sister became very strange. She had peculiar ways. She became very despondent. Throughout, she said she had pains in her head and pains in her back. Now, none of which the doctors could seem to cure, and they didn't really seem to know why. Some doctors have suggested that she may have had blood clots. Although this is not certain about this. She saw persons coming through the wall and talking to her at night. She had constantly having distressing dreams. As mentioned in the episode, she said she saw policemen in her room coming to take her away, and there were mice and black beetles running in her bed. Her face was constantly flushed, and Eliza said during the last kind of month or so, she'd almost entirely lost her memory. She couldn't, Sarah wasn't sleeping much, but also things had to be repeated to her 2-3 times until she could actually work out what was being said. Sarah had repeated suspicions. So there's other doctors here. There's a Dr. Byam as well, who was Dr. William Byam, who I didn't mention about here. There's 3 or 4 doctors, and I just felt that there was too many doctors. It would confuse the issue, so I basically focused on Dr. Cathro. But Dr. Byam was another one, and he said Sarah. Eliza had said to her that she was really worried that the doctors were there to try and take the baby away from her, which in a way is kind of something that they were doing anyway. They were worried about the safety of the baby, but what's that noise? It's the I thought there was a mosquito in the room then. Maybe I'm getting paranoid. I hear mosquitoes at night because they do come into the boat during the night, but I worked out it's the fan on my laptop. Let's hope it's still recording. It is. I'm still recording. They were constantly trying to work out whether she was safe to be out on the streets, whether they could confine her, whether they could declare her as insane. They never really got to the point where they could say she was insane. And don't forget, this era, a husband could really confine his wife to an assignment with very little evidence. If he had the money and he had the means to do so, all it would take is his signature and a doctor's signature, which, of course, you could buy. There wasn't a huge amount of ethics back then. End of May 1863, Frederick and Sarah had an argument. We don't know what the argument was, but we know that at that point he had given her a letter. We're guessing it was the same letter that was later sent to Eliza. but we don't know what it read because she tore it up and she burnt it in the fire. 25th of June 1863, unable to get through to her, Frederick Chapel had delivered. Everything is now being done through solicitors, but also her doctors. That seems to be the way that everything's done. Frederick sent a letter to Elizabeth explaining the situation because he felt that Elizabeth was the sane one. Obviously she was, saying, I put an abbreviated version of this in the episode, but really it says, "Dear Elizabeth, I'm very sorry to have to tell you that from what has occurred between me and your sister over the last few days, her violence has been such that I have become hopeless of her ever getting on comfortably together, and I have written to her to say that a separation must take place between us, for I am convinced this is the best thing for her as well as myself. With this view, my solicitor will call tomorrow morning to confer with her as to my making a proper settlement for you all, for I am resolved neither your sister nor yourself shall ever want for anything. If you would like to see me again on any matter, I should like you to come to the office, and if you would let me know previously, I will take care to be in the way to receive you." Just speak normally, you twat. "And matters over with you. You and your sister with baby will be enabled to live wherever you like, although should it be somewhere where I should be able to see the baby occasionally. I am sure you will never forsake poor baby, and that you will do your duty to the poor child. Give her a kiss for me, and believe me, yours sincerely, F. Chapel." So there was it. So when she died, she had £60 in credit in her bank account, which is roughly £7,500 today, just over. So she had. She wasn't impoverished at the time she died. She had a good amount of money. He'd set her up in a place where she didn't need to pay the rent. In his will, it was stated that she would get £250 a year, which is £14.21. That's about, it's about 20 grand a year. It's a decent amount of money. To be given to Sarah, with £100. £100 of that to be given to Sarah, and £100 to the child she was pregnant with at that point, which would have been his son. This was dated 3rd of March, which was prior to the child's premature birth and its death. What else have we got? Let's just whiz on a bit. A couple of days before everything kind of went horrible, the doctors had decided that she was not insane, therefore she was sane. So Dr. Byam of Welbeck Street and Dr. Cathro, both of them had gone to see her. They said she was doing better in her confinement. The one thing that she was worried about was she was not on friendly terms with Frederick Chapel, but they did say that she was sane at that point, which is why it's always weird when later on they go, no, she's entirely insane. 31st July 1863, the day of the murder itself. As mentioned, Eliza took the baby out for a walk in a place that shall not be named yet. She returned about 12 o'clock. She came back. She said her sister was in a good mood. She put the baby in a cot about 1:30. They had dinner together, and then later she went to Covent Garden Market for a peach for her sister, as her sister desired one. She said, "When I left in the morning, I left the child in the care of its mother in the room on the first floor, which was kind of a bedroom / nursery. In it was a cot." Where's the stuff about the clothes? Dr. Cathro and the solicitor. Interestingly, the solicitor was the same solicitor who would defend Frederick at the inquest. So the same solicitor who was the one who turned up and was like, you need to sign this document, blah, blah, blah. He was the same one who defended Frederick at the inquest, which doesn't seem right. They turned up at her lodging on Marylebone Road at about 12 o'clock. So it's Dr. Byam, Dr. Cathro and the solicitor. So three of them there basically having a go at her. She was there lying on the sofa with the Bible in her hand. Dr. Byam said that she was in a nervous condition. They described the conversation and consultation lasting about 20 minutes. Consultation, a nice way to say having a go at her. In court, it was stated, was your object in going there to determine whether or not she ought to be put under restraint? Dr. Byam said, yes, it was. In court, from what you saw of her, should you say she was an obstinate woman? He said, yes, excessively so. This was the point where he said, I thought so because she wasn't taking my advice, which I gave her with the best intention. Utter bullshit. And the doctor said she was labouring under a form of insanity. I thought her of unsound mind. That was my judgment of her when I first saw her. While she was there, this was when she was saying to them, they said, which one? So this is Dr. Byam. He said, I told her I was sure we were only there to make her comfortable and happy. I could get her a handsome settlement made upon her. I wished her to give up all the annoyance of Dr. Chappell, basically. Don't harass him anymore with legal stuff. Just sign the bloody document. I alluded to her excessive and numerous acts of jealousy. She told me she was jealous of Dr. Chappell. She was jealous of one woman in particular, a Welsh woman. She said that Mr. Chappell showed her that Welsh woman all his kindness and affection, but neglected her. We don't know anything about this Welsh woman, or even if the Welsh woman exists at all. Throughout, see, this is the problem when it goes to court. All we've got, because she's dead, all we've got is the doctor's opinion, and who are they going to believe, the doctors or a woman who's dead? She was always excessively jealous and occasionally attacked with hysteria. She was not of a very severe character. After that, basically they left her at that point and then went back and said, we want you to stop annoying our client, basically sign the bloody document. The murder itself, as mentioned, Eliza came back, they had lunch, and then she left. They said that there was premeditation towards the murder, which kind of there is. She got out of bed, she dressed herself in a kind of night dresses, and as mentioned in the episode, she'd set up a night dress, a clean pair of stockings, and a robe for the baby, which she'd folded and put on the chair. This was their funeral clothes. The baby was killed and she attacked herself with a stiletto/razor, i.e. small dagger. Now, interestingly, although there was an investigation into this and police went into the room, initially they couldn't find the razor. It didn't seem to exist. She was in a room, the room was locked, they couldn't find the razor. Then 3 days later, behind one of the blinds, it dropped on the floor. A policeman went in, he was looking around, it dropped on the floor, and he went, oh, look, there's a knife with blood on it. Now, don't forget, this isn't an era where you can't really determine what type of blood it is. Human's blood, animal blood, you can just say it's blood. But that would have been important for the trial to be able to say, this is the knife. Obviously, this is I think it's just pre-fingerprints as well. So they needed the knife there to be able to say, right, she's in a locked room, the baby's dead, she tried to kill herself, this is the murder weapon, therefore it's a murder/suicide. Maybe it was found that way, or maybe it's just bullshit. Eliza returned just before 4:00. She found the drawing room, as she calls it, fastened. She was banging on it. She couldn't get into the room. She was calling her sister's name, but her sister didn't reply. So she went to Dr. Cathro, who she knew, and he was the one. He approached the door. He got a fire poker and he broke it through the panel. And on looking through, he exclaimed, "Oh, what a sight!" There you go, because that's what you do. Dr. Cathro said, "I found both doors locked. I asked for a hammer and a poker to break through the door. The poker was brought and I broke open the panel of the door and tried to get through. But I could not. I pushed the prisoner's sister through and opened the other door and let me in." Sarah was lying on the floor. The baby was lying on the bed with some pillows over its face, suggesting that she'd also, having stabbed it, tried to smother it. Dr. Cathro said there's blood all over Sarah except on her knees and feet. So she was obviously sitting on the bed when a lot of this was happening. I saw that she had a very long, jagged wound to her throat extending 4 or 5 inches. The child was lying on the right-hand side of the bed, covered wholly with the exception of the left leg with a pillow. It was still alive. The razor was lying on the bed. See, he says the razor's lying on the bed at that point, but later they said they couldn't find the razor. You can't fully trust everything everyone says. Injuries to the baby. Its clothes were entirely saturated with blood. Doctor said on stripping the baby, he found a small, clean cut 1/2 inch below the nipple, which he later dressed with a sticking plaster. Great doctor. Baby has been stabbed. It's barely alive, and he puts a plaster on it. There you go. Whew, that's gonna help everything. As mentioned, the baby died a couple of days later. Death was caused by the wound, the dagger having entered the lungs, the cavity of the thorax, nicking the heart but not actually going through it and going through the diaphragm. He said the wound had been inflicted by the razor, which was the one that was later found and covered in blood. What else we got? I think that's pretty much it. Inquest was fast, as mentioned. It took them 5 minutes to make a decision. A willful murder. She was held at Newgate Prison. The Dr. Chone, the physician of Charing Cross Hospital, he was the one who made the decision that even though she'd lost a lot of blood, having slit her own throat, the best way to make her better was bloodletting. Well done. Unfortunately, it was a thing that was kind of key at that point. Doctors were kind of all over it. And he was like, do you know what we need to do? We need to make her lose more blood. Utter twat. Trial was held at the Old Bailey. 3 days in total, 26th to the 28th of October, on the charge of murder of child and attempted murder by suicide. We don't know much more about that. I did a kind of a digging into her life. She was still in Broadmoor in 1871. 1881 she's not there, and neither is she any dates after that. So I couldn't find more of her after that. So we don't know much about the rest of her life, but the likelihood is she's probably died by that point, and not all the records are there, so we can't actually prove where she is. Anyway, that's that. Core lummy. Right, let's do the quiz questions. I haven't even had a swig of my herbal tea. Quiz questions. Here we go. Who gave Ringo Starr his marching orders? It was Barbara Bach, who was the former Bond girl who he married. He's not the best Bond girl, obviously, because as we all know, the best Bond girl in the world is Eva. Of course, that's a given. Question number 2. What city did Sarah and Eliza come from? It was Liverpool. Question 3. What was the name of Frederick's splendid home in the country? It was Highton Hall. Question 4. What did Dr. Cathro diagnose Sarah as having post-labour? It was hysterical peritonitis. Question 5. In the 1800s, hysteria, mood swings, depression and fainting spells were given the fashionable name of what? It was the vapours. Question 6. At what station did Frederick meet Sarah and Eliza to show them their first lodging? It was at Baker Street. Question 7. What 2 modern luxuries did the lodging house have? It was running water and gas lighting. Ooh. Question 8. What was the first name of both of Sarah's children? Come on, everyone should have got this one. It's easy. It was Sarah and Frederick. Question 9. Where did Eliza take the child for its last ever walk? It was Regent's Park. And question 10. Where was the inquest held? It was held at the Buffalo's Head Tavern on the Marylebone Road. So there we go. That's it, people. Hope you enjoyed that. That was episode 184. Got a couple more to go before we dive into the the extra things. There we go. Right, that's me done. Have yourself a good week, people. Stay safe. Thanks for supporting the show, and have yourself a good week. Be good.